Um, today's deal, you just need to understand a few things that a lot of people know and a lot of people don't know. The first thing is you need to know your directions as a general rule, in which we have our little compass rose. Maybe you don't need to know these. Oh yes, we do need to know. When you have directions, some people are just naturally good at these and some people aren't. I would say I'm somewhere in the middle. Sometimes I don't. But when you go up, normally we call that what? North. Okay. And then people remember this, a lot of people remember this by never eat soggy waffles. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I'm sure there's other ones. I'm just going to go with the one I know. Never eat soggy waffles. And that means this: north, east, never eat, south is soggy, and west is waffles. Okay? And then if you ever get to this sort of stuff in here, this is northeast, this is southeast. We always start with the north and the south. This is southwest, and this is northwest. We never call something east, south, or whatever it is. We always start with either the norths or the souths. And if I asked you this, you know, if you were heading off to Morris, which is that way, down 47, what direction is that? Some people know, some people don't. And you should have some sort of an idea. Heaven forbid you ever. And a good indication of whether it's either north or south is you look at which way the sun is at. The sun is rarely in the north or the south because it rises in the east and sets, like you pointed that way, and it sets in the west. But in the winter you got to watch out because a lot of times the earth is tilted in such a way that it looks like it. So anyways, if you're going to Morris, which is that way, and Yorkville is that way, Morris is in what direction from here? Boom, 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 Grace.
South.
It is south. Morris is south. That means when you go to Yorkville, you go north. If you're heading out that way to Millbrook, to / Plano, whatever it is, that is west. That's where the sun sets. And out that way is the Atlantic Ocean if you keep going. That is east. Okay. Now, if a wind is blowing from the northeast, if the wind blows from the northeast, where is it coming from, Jane? Point to me the direction it's coming from.
Northwest. Or from here?
It's blowing from the northeast. Stand up, Jaden. If the wind is blowing from the northeast and you want your face, you want to be into the wind, you want to be facing the wind, which direction would you be facing? No, you've got your back to the wind now. The wind is blowing from the northeast, blowing that way. And as a general rule, you will look outside, and lately, most of our winds have been coming from two directions? Winds generally come from two directions, every once in a while three, and rarely from one direction. Which way? Here's a little geography lesson for you. Elijah, winds. Give us a little lesson on winds. Most of the time, winds come from what direction? Negative. Because you just hear the old nor'eastern stories. By the way, a nor'easterner, bad news. The wind comes from the northeast, bad news for everybody involved, actually. Drew, the wind comes from usually
Northwest.
No, more. What's that?
Jet stream, because it comes this way.
Yes and no. As a general rule, winds come most often from, Keith, straight west. Westerly winds, because that's the way the United States is. Here's California, blah, blah, blah. Florida, blah, blah, blah. Maine, the Great Lakes, blah, blah, blah. Weather patterns, children. If you want to know what your weather's going to be like, go see what the weather's like in Iowa, because most weather patterns and the winds blow from the west. They're coming from this side of the United States, from the Pacific Ocean, blowing that stuff here to where good old Illinois is. Okay, now, the last few days or the last few weeks it's been cold. If it's cold out, generally the winds are coming probably from what direction? The north, because cold weather comes from the north. And whoever said northwest, was that you, Drew? Probably lately a lot of our winds, rarely does a wind come due north. That's not because that means the jet stream is going like this. But most of the times, if it's kind of chilly out, it's going to be a northwest wind. This weekend, it's supposed to get up to the 70s or whatever. I am going to guess, if that happens, guess where the wind is probably coming from, Brianna? The south. You're going to say that, aren't you? Okay, and that's why if it gets to be 70 degrees, this wind is blowing warm weather up from the south up to us. Now notice what direction rarely does the wind come from? Carol Winkleman? The east. And people say if it's a northeast wind, really the only time that happens is when you have a weather pattern where the winds are swirling and you have a front that wraps around itself like hurricanes do that big circular thing. If that happens, if you see the wind coming from the east, that is usually an indication that you're going to get some kind of bad weather, rain, precipitation, whatever storms. You look at 90% of the time when the wind comes from the east, that's usually a good sign because that means some weather system is wrapping around and doing kind of bad things. Wayne Kavarik has a, generally speaking, that's not 100% true, but you watch weather guys, they'll talk about it if the wind's coming from that way. And then yes, you have to look to see what the jet stream is doing. If the jet stream goes like this and pushes cold air down, it's going to be cold. But if the jet stream pushes cold air up like this from the south, it's going to be. You are now very educated in the world of north, south, east, and west directions. Now that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here.
Wow.
But I'm trying to get you to fish just a little bit. What you have to also understand with this is this, okay, that these things kind of make a big circle, okay, and we can split directions into degrees as well. In other words, if you're facing north, if I'm facing Yorkville, and I turn 90 degrees to the right, I do this 90 degree to the right turn, and I'm now going in this direction, what direction am I facing? So I'm going north, I turn 90 degrees, now I am facing in what direction, Luke?
So.
I am not. That's 180 degrees. 180 degrees would get you an about face and you'd be going in the opposite direction. I'm only turning 90 degrees, that would be 90 degrees would be east. Thank you very much. Okay. If I turned 180 degrees from north, then I'm heading the opposite direction going south. If I turned 270 degrees, that would put me at west. And if I made a complete 360, that means all I did was turn around and I'm facing in the exact direction that I did there. Now, what does the book ask us here? Let's write down a problem here. Andy and Barney were both facing north. Andy and Barney were facing north. Andy made a quarter turn clockwise. And they go, Andy made 1/4, and then they put 90 degree turn clockwise. People struggle with that clockwise. Clockwise should not be hard because that's the way a clock turns. Clockwise, here's your clock, 12, 1, 2, 3. Clockwise spins in that direction. The way the hands of the clock go. While Bernie turned counterclockwise until he faced east. While Barney, did I say Bernie? While Barney turned counterclockwise till he faced east. He faced east. How many degrees did Barney turn? How many degrees did Barn turn? Now, once again, you'll notice that in this problem there are an awful lot of words. And anytime there is an awful lot of words, you always want to draw a picture. And the first thing I would do then is Andy and Barney were both facing north, so here you are. You've got Andy and Barney both facing north. Andy and Barney both facing north. It says Andy made a quarter turn clockwise to face east. So here's Andy. He turns this way a quarter of a turn. Here's Andy now. He's facing east. And then it says Barney turned counterclockwise until he also faced east. Here's Barney. Barney then turned all the way around till he was also facing east. The question is, how many degrees did Barney turn? So how many degrees is it from here, think about this, to go to here, to go to here, to go to there? It's always good to think about 90 degrees there. He turned 90 degrees to get to this, then he turned another 90 degrees to get there, turned another 90 degrees to get there. So Barney turned, Delaney, 90 plus 90 plus 90. Or 90 times 3.
270.
Yeah, 270 degrees. How many degrees did Andy turn? Jaden. 90. One more problem. Write this one down. Elizabeth ran around the park. Or Elizabeth took a lap around the park. Took a lap around the park. She made 6 left turns and no turns to the right. She made 6 left turns What was the average number of degrees in the turns? What was average number of degrees per turn? And again, this all comes from drawing a picture here. Who's this girl? Elizabeth. So here's Elizabeth. And it doesn't matter which way she starts because she's going to end in that same place because the lap means you start bending. So Elizabeth goes in the park. She turns 6 times. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. She makes 6 turns. What is her average number of degrees she turned? Well, let's think about this. If she went straight, she would have gone there. If she went straight, she would have gone there. In order for you to make a complete turnaround, was what she did. She started in this direction, turned, and ended in the same direction. How many total degrees did she have to turn to end up going in the same direction she started in, Isabel? Right, so she made a total of 360 degrees. How many turns did she make? 6. So you have to cut 360 into 6 because they're one average. It doesn't say maybe one time she turned a little bit more. She ended up turning an average of 60 degrees per turn. 60 degrees, 60 degrees, 60 degrees, 60 degrees, 60 degrees, and then 60 degrees. That is her average per turn.